Oh, there we go. Hey, folks, we're not quite ready to start yet, but there are a couple of announcements that I thought you could benefit from before we officially start. Feel free to listen with one ear or both or neither, but we're going to do those right now. So starting with the library director, Ryan Donovan, and the handing out of the Peggy Tuttle Award. Ryan, come on up.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ryan Donovan, and I'm the director of the Southborough Library. It is my privilege this year to present the Peggy Tuttle Award for Library Service Distinction. During her 30-plus years as a librarian, Peggy Tuttle always said that people were the most important part of the job. Peggy played a huge part in establishing the welcoming attitude and creating the charm of our town's library. Assistant Director Kim Ivers, who knew Peggy Tuttle for the majority of her professional career, described Peggy Tuttle as, quote, the embodiment of customer service. The individual that I am here today to honor has committed over 2 decades of service to the Southborough Library. She has served many of those years as the treasurer of the Friends of the Southborough Library. She has organized over 10 tea and poetry programs at the library, which have been successful, beloved, and are routinely attended by over 50 people annually. She is always one of the first volunteers at our annual book sales and is always the last person to leave. In the last several years, she has brought a popular adult yoga program to the library over the summer. She is also one of our best library customers. Every time she comes into the library, she makes the staff smile. I am extremely proud to present this year's Peggy Tuttle Award to resident Prudence Webster. Please join me in congratulating Prudence. It's fancy. I know, everyone's always surprised. Oh, you want to get up? Oh.
I would just like to take this opportunity to say thank you. But the thank you I really want to make is to Ryan and the library staff who've managed to keep it ticking over through these difficult times, and it has been wonderful to be able to go and pick up a book. So thank you, Ryan, and to all your staff. Thank you.
Good morning, Southborough. My name is Steve Achilles. I'm your fire chief. On behalf of the town clerk, the Board of Health, Police Department, and Fire Department, I would like to take this opportunity to provide a quick health and safety briefing for today's meeting. There are 5 portable bathrooms located at the rear of the hall, and they will be cleaned throughout the day. We encourage you to stay well hydrated, use sunscreen, wear hats, or seek shade as needed over the course of today's meeting to minimize the impact of sun and heat. We have students available throughout the assembly to provide cold water if you need it. Myself and members of the fire department are here and available to assist anybody that has a medical emergency or other needs. Also, members of the police department are here to assist you. In the event of severe weather, you will be directed by the moderator to exit the assembly. We suggest you return to your vehicles and await further instructions on the status of the meeting. We have provided access to the school going down the right-hand side of the school, door C5. You'll be directed over there for those people that need shelter and do not have a vehicle. As for exiting the assembly for any emergency, please leave in orderly fashion down the aisles out to the back of the assembly hall. Stay safe and have a great day.
Hi, everyone. My name is Angela Varner, and I'm a member of the Southborough Municipal Technology Committee. Our group would like to point your attention to the brochure that we've provided on the tables. The brochure is about our town's 5-year technology strategy that's currently under development. It includes access to both the town survey, which we strongly encourage everyone to fill out, as well as a link to our MTC website where there's a copy of the full technology strategy for your review. We would just encourage everyone to take a look at the brochure, and please, again, fill out the town survey. That's an important input into our evolving strategy. Thank you very much.
Folks, I'm informed that we do have a quorum, so I'm going to invite the tellers to come forward right now, and as soon as we get them sworn, we'll get going. Thanks. Jim, we ready to go? Good morning, folks. Welcome to your 2021 annual town meeting. Over 11 months ago, I stood in this exact same spot and congratulated those in attendance that day on being here for a once-in-a-lifetime event. Needless to say, I am out of the prediction business. My name is Paul Semino. I'm your town moderator. I've been informed by our town clerk that a quorum of 100 registered voters is now present, and therefore this annual town meeting will come to order. As your moderator, I'm responsible for the conduct of this meeting, and I am pleased to see you all here this morning, especially those that are attending town meeting for the first time. Indeed, if it is your first time attending town meeting and you decide to come to the microphone today at some point, please let us know that it's your first time attending so we can give you the recognition you sincerely deserve. Today, I will do my best to honor everyone's commitment to our town's governance by proceeding along as fairly and efficiently as possible. Like I have observed with every town meeting I have moderated, your selectmen, advisory committee, town administrator, and town council have performed admirably on our behalf to put written materials and recommendations before you today. Others have as well, and I hope everyone was able to pick up the many informational handouts available on the tables as you checked in. Meanwhile, like last year, tremendous consideration for your safety and detailed logistical planning have gone into today's meeting. On the safety side, I am grateful for the advice of our Board of Health, chaired by Mary Lou Woodford, as well as our public safety chiefs, Fire Chief Steve Achilles and Police Chief Ken Paulus, both of whom are here today. On the logistical side, again, full credit for the careful selection and equipment layout of our site goes to our town clerk, Jim Hegarty. And so now, a few logistical notes before we get started. Just FYI, as a point of interest, maybe only to me, we're coming to the end of the light, or the end of the light at the end of the COVID tunnel. Yesterday, I was informed that 74% of Southborough residents age 16 and older have been fully vaccinated. I think that's a pretty remarkable number. That includes me, in case I come out there and forget my mask. In keeping with newly announced CDC guidance, if you are fully vaccinated, you do not need to wear a face covering outside unless you are not socially distanced. If you are not fully vaccinated and cannot maintain social distance, we ask that you continue wearing a face covering to protect yourself and your fellow residents. Today, we clearly still do not have our large video screen that we normally do in the Trotter Auditorium, so please do rely on the printed materials I mentioned earlier, and of course, ask as many questions as you may need as we go along. You may recall that the high-gain microphones pick up your voice without standing physically close, so please observe a distance from the mic when you go to the mic. It is warm today. We have free bottled water for anybody who would like it. And as Chief Achilles mentioned, we have a duty crew here as well, should any medical need arise. And finally, although we cannot live stream today's meeting, the proceedings are being recorded by the fine folks at Southborough Access Media. And now, if you would all please rise in place if you're able, as I invite Steve Wynot, U.S. Navy retiree and commander of local VFW Post 3276, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Commander Wynot, please come forward.
I'd ask you all to place your hand over your heart and remove your hats. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commander Wynot, and you may all be seated. For the purpose of counting standing votes as needed today, 6 volunteer tellers have been appointed and duly sworn by the clerk. They are Joe Provo, Kathy Cook, Matt Probst, Andrew Pfaff, Jesse Sigler, and Steve Wynot. I thank them for their service today. In New England, a town meeting serves as the legislative branch of town government. The town meeting decides whether to appropriate money to run a town, considers whether to create, revise, or remove local town statutes known as bylaws. Here in Southborough, we operate by an open town meeting, meaning that every registered voter in attendance can participate and vote on all matters before us today. In order to facilitate our meeting, a warrant is issued in advance for voters to be forewarned about the time, place, and substance of the matters to be considered. The warrant before us today is a light blue colored document, and in it you will find a total of 39 articles that we must consider or otherwise dispose of today. As I alluded to earlier, my goal today is to dispose of the entire warrant in a manner that gives us a very good chance to do so today. That being said, state legislation and Governor Baker's emergency order, which is still in effect since last year, permits the deviation from our town bylaw in terms of the day, time, and place of annual town meeting. Therefore, today's schedule is as follows. This first session will run from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m., and then following a 1-hour recess, a second session today from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. if necessary. And if still necessary after that, we will reconvene tomorrow right here at 1 p.m. to finish things up. As always, unless otherwise determined by statute or town bylaw, the conduct of town meeting is governed by the rules and practices contained in the latest edition of Town Meeting Time in Chapter 41 of our town code. Our past practice has been to allow certain approved non-registered voters into our assembly. Typically, these people are town employees, members of the press, students from government classes, and the like. All non-registered voters must wear the blue and yellow wristbands issued by the clerk and will not be allowed to speak unless approved by me or the assembly. The non-registered voters that may be present today are Paul Sabelli, Assessor; Vanessa Hale, Assistant Town Administrator; Amy Berry, Assistant Town Clerk; Lori Lavoli, Building Commissioner; Mary Bulso from Central Mass Projects, LLC; Stuart Foster, Community Advocate Reporter; Melissa Danza, Conservation Agent; John Parent, our Director of Facilities; Rebecca Pellegrino, Director of Finance; Sarah Cassell, Director of Youth and Family Services; Karen Galligan, DPW Superintendent; Marika Munsif, our Economic Development Coordinator; Frank Durkin from the Facilities Department; Paul Pazinski, our Public Health Agent; Ryan Donovan, the Library Director; Sarah Hecker, Planning Department Assistant; Ken Paulus, Police Chief; Dr. Heather Elker, Public Health Director; Tim Davis, Recreation Director; Karen Ares, Regional School Committee Member; Joan Frank, Regional School Committee Member; Trevor Dillman, Southborough Access Media; Owen Jones, Southborough Access Media; Terry Underwood, Southborough Access Media; Stephanie Reinhorn, Assistant Superintendent of Southborough Schools; Keith Lavoie, Assistant Superintendent of Operations; Gregory Martineau, Superintendent of Schools; Lynn Spencer of Spencer, Sullivan, and Vogt; Pamela Francois, Senior Center Director; Jay Montillo, Technology Manager; Carla McAuliffe, Town Accountant; Mark Purple, Town Administrator; Karen Garrity, Administrative Assistant to the Town Clerk; Karina Quinn, Town Planner; and Brian Ballantyne, the Town Treasurer. If there are no objections, we welcome these people here today. Seeing none. Our bylaw requires me to define the bounds of the assembly. Today, this entire grassy field, as bounded by the yellow caution tape to my front and right, as well as the chain link fence to my rear and to the left, are considered the bounds, and all eligible attendees must be within those bounds to vote today. You'll note that today's registered attendees have been issued a red, white, and blue wristband, like I'm wearing, and a red voter card, like I have here. Note that all wristbands should be kept on until the end of today so that we can facilitate you coming right back in after the midday recess. Briefly on the topic of conduct and decorum today, I think all of us expect that we are ladies and gentlemen in our town generally, and certainly in a setting like this. So first, please silence your mobile devices now if you haven't already. And remember that nobody is permitted to place or take calls within the bounds of the assembly. If you must place or take a call, you will need to leave and do so only from the parking lot. More importantly, on the topic of decorum, our town meeting bylaw explicitly requires speakers to confine their comments to the article under consideration, as well as refrain from mentioning by name any other person present. I hope I would not be necessary for me to admonish or otherwise hold anyone out of order for reasons of decorum, given that we're here to conduct our town's business thoughtfully and efficiently and with regard for all of the others here with us. If you picked up the annual town report on your way in today, on page 7, you will find a list of the 50 individuals that our community lost in 2020.
We have a decorum issue here. We have a citizen walking around trying to get people to sign a petition or document.
Why don't you take the mic and take the other podium? Do that. Sorry, folks, 1 minute, please. Town Clerk, Jim Haggerty.
Can you hear me? Folks, just a matter of decorum. Inside this hall, nobody can bring any papers around to ask anyone to sign any petitions for any documents. Please discontinue that or you'll be removed from the hall.
Thank you, Jim. I was mentioning the annual town report, page 7, you can find a list of 50 individuals that our community lost in 2020. Included in that list is the subject of the dedication, just preceding it on page 5, Arthur Holmes, who served our town for decades, primarily as a member of the Board of Assessors and as our town's first full-time assessor. Please join me now in a moment of silence to remember Arthur and all of our other departed neighbors. Thank you very much. Finally, a very few notes about our parliamentary process today. Any presentations today will be made from the podium to my immediate left. Again, we do not have a video screen, so please consult your written materials as we go through the warrant and make sure to ask questions. As is now customary, your town clerk, Jim Haggerty, and your town council, Aldo Cipriano, are up front with me, while your Board of Selectmen, chaired by Lisa Braccio, and your advisory committee, chaired by Kathy Cook, are sitting at the tables in the front. All of us up here are registered voters like you, but nevertheless, I think it is good to remind everyone here that the primary and most prominent function of town meeting does not occur up front here. It occurs out there through your questions, debates, and votes. Thus, as we proceed through the warrant today, any town meeting member can go to any of the microphones, first state their name and address, and then speak to the current motion or ask a question. Any town officials who wish to join the debate will wait in the queue to speak, as do any other voters. All questions should be directed through me. No one may speak until recognized at a microphone by me, and this includes calls to move a question. The only exceptions to that rule are a question of privilege or a point of order. If you wish to raise a point of order, you still must rise and be recognized. If someone moves a question, I will determine whether there has been adequate discussion and may forestall that motion for the time being. I will not necessarily be asking advisory or the Board of Selectmen whether their position on any issue is support or not support, because that information is printed in the warrant. Of course, in any case, if you wish to hear further from advisory or selectmen on any matter, you may ask that question at one of the microphones. As we focus our discussions today, we will hear from everyone wishing to speak to an article, pro, con, or otherwise, until I have determined that things are getting repetitive or belabored. And at that point, I will suggest that we proceed to a vote. At the time of any vote, I will remind you of the quantum of vote necessary to pass each proposal, for example, a simple majority, a 2/3 majority, etc. And then I'll call for the vote. If I can determine the prevailing vote from here, I will announce it immediately, including declaring a 2/3 majority. If at least 7 voters rise to question my assessment of any vote, or if I deem a vote too close to call, we will ask the tellers to come forward and count individual votes. With that, I have examined the call of the town meeting, the receipt of the officer's return of service for the posting, and the return of the mailing. Under our rules, I must read the entire warrant either at the beginning of the meeting or prior to the motion introducing each article, unless a motion is made to dispense with that reading. Therefore, do I have a motion to dispense with the reading of the call of the meeting and the officer's return of service, and to waive the reading of the separate articles of the warrant? So moved. Do I have a second? Second. All in favor of waiving reading now? All against? The motion carries. So now we'll get into the warrant. To start our warrant review today, we will conduct what is called the consent part of this town meeting. I hope most of you were able to pick up my two sunflower yellow handouts on your way in today. I'll be the first to admit there's a couple of typos on these, and I'll explain them as we go through. But the first handout we need to deal with is a single sheet, front and back, and it's titled Consent List for Enactment under the Bylaw, Section 41-6C. If you weren't able to pick up the handout, don't worry, I'll explain everything. Under a relatively new bylaw in town since 2018, the moderator may propose to the assembly a grouping of warrant articles to be considered together as a block. So that way, several articles that are considered routine may be voted at one time. And theoretically, this saves us considerable time for other articles in the warrant that may need more time. It is important to note that I, as moderator, only propose the list, but you, the assembly, must approve it. Therefore, before asking for the summary vote, I will go through this list one by one very quickly and ask if any voter wishes to hold any of the articles listed on it. If there is any hold, then we'll simply remove that from the consent list and take it up in the usual order. I hope that process is clear, but at this point, if there are any questions about our consent process, I'd be happy to answer them. Okay, seeing none. It's important to note that the articles on the consent list also have the support of the individual article sponsors. Everybody whose article is on this list has consented to it being on there. So nothing on this list is being enacted against anybody's will. Our new bylaw that allows for this process obviously implies taking these articles out of order, because we normally go through the warrant in order, but our bylaw allows this deviation from that. Again, if there's any doubt about whether a particular item on this list should be there, please do hold it. You will not offend me in any way. All right, let's go through the list. These articles are to be enacted by a summary vote unless there's any objection. Article 2, the annual acceptance of payment from our nonprofits in town. Article 3, short-term borrowing, which authorizes the treasurer to borrow against anticipated revenue. Again, anybody has an issue, just yell out hold. Now, Article 4, contracts for services, that allows the Board of Selectmen to exceed the 3-year limit that's currently in the Mass General Law, but caps it at 7 years. Article 9, annual funding of $250,000 for retiree benefits. That's the OPEB trust fund. Article 12, annual funding, in this case $5,000 for property damage deductibles. Article 13, annual funding of $100,000 of our facilities maintenance fund. Article 14, the annual authorization of revolving fund spending limits. Article 15, the CPA administrative article, which requires annual allocation of overall CPA funding to the different buckets. Article 16, the annual payment of debt approved by town meeting for CPA-funded preservation restriction at 84 Main Street. Article 17, annual payment of debt approved by town meeting for CPA-funded renovation and restoration of the library facade. Article 24, a reduction of the property tax abatement interest rate and an increase in income limits for tax abatement benefits residents 65 and older. We're holding number 24. Article 25, increasing the qualification period for official swearing in from 15 to 30 days. Article 26 updates the manner of notification and possible additional locations for town meetings. We'll hold 26. Article 27 adopts Mass General Law to count Saturday as a holiday, any Saturday as a holiday, which is not necessarily happening today in our clerk's office. But what the effect of that is that it allows an extra day for many deadlines, including voter registration and things like that. That's Article 27. Article 28, adoption of Mass General Law to authorize the Board of Selectmen to reduce speed limits to 25 miles an hour in certain areas. Okay, we'll hold 28. And Article 29, adoption of Mass General Law to authorize the Board of Selectmen to adopt 20-mile-per-hour safety zones. Okay, so I heard holds on 24, 26, and 28. Is that? Okay. So we'll take those off the list, and we'll be voting as a block on Articles 2, 3, 4, 9, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 25, 27, and 29. Passage of this consent list requires a majority vote. All in favor, please raise your red cards. All opposed? The motion carries. Okay, at this point in a typical meeting, we proceed through the remainder of the warrant, one article at a time, until we complete the warrant. This year, however, a number of article sponsors have asked to withdraw their respective articles after the warrant was signed and printed. Because these articles are in the printed warrant, we cannot just simply ignore them, but there is an efficient way we can dispose of them today. This process is outlined in my second yellow handout, which is titled Plan for Initial Motion Flow for 2021 Annual Town Meeting. And once again, I'll explain. We just completed part 1 of that document, which is the consent list. Under part 2 of this document, there is a related series of 3 motions that when we take them together, they will implement a summary disposal of the articles in question. That is to say, the articles that sponsors have asked to withdraw. In summary, the 3 motions do the following. The first motion takes these articles out of order, which requires a vote to do so. The second motion temporarily suspends the rules that we must consider each of them individually. And the third motion disposes of the group via indefinite postponement, which is a parliamentary status that effectively kills those articles for this town meeting, again, at the request of the sponsors. With that, I will pause and call for any questions at all about this process. So the way to think of this is the consent list we already did, those articles were all passed as a group. Now this list, these articles are being basically dumped as a group at the request of the sponsors. Okay, we'll move to the preliminary motions. By the way, I do know that Ms. Braccio is the chair of the Board of Selectmen. My handout is a couple of editions old, so Mr. Healy has agreed to do the honors because his name is on it. Mr. Healy.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. And if you just indulge me for about 20 seconds, 2 things. Number one, it's nice to see so many people here at, I guess now closer to 11 o'clock in the morning. But honestly, more importantly, it is so nice to see so many people, which obviously has not been the case for all of us in the last 15 months or so. So with that, Mr. Moderator, I move to reorder the consideration of articles contained in the warrant, specifically by advancing the following articles for consideration at this time along with Article 1, Articles 6, 23, and 38.
Mr. Healy, am I on? Let's keep me on, please. One of the typos in my list is that Article 26, which is a town clerk article, has also been added as a voluntary withdrawal. So I'm going to ask you to make your motion again and include 26 in that list.
All right, Mr. Moderator, I move to reorder the consideration of articles contained in the warrant, specifically by advancing the following articles for consideration at this time along with Article 1. Articles 6, 23, 26, and 38.
Does that receive a second? Receives a second. This article requires a majority vote. All those in favor, this motion requires a majority vote. All those in favor, please raise your red cards. All those opposed. Okay, that motion carries. Mr. Healy.
Mr. Moderator, I move that we suspend the rules solely to permit simultaneous consideration in our voting of Articles 1, 6, 23, 26, and 38.
Does that receive a second? Thank you. Because this is a suspension of the rules, it requires a 2/3 vote. All those in favor, please raise your cards. All those opposed. I declare a 2/3 majority on that motion. And finally, the third motion, Mr. Healy.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the matters contained in Articles 1, 6, 23, 26, and 38 be postponed indefinitely.
Does that receive a second? Okay, this requires a majority vote, and as I say, indefinite postponement dispenses of the articles for this town meeting. All those in favor, please raise your red cards. All opposed. Thank you, that motion passes as well. Thank you, Mr. Healy. I just want to take note that when I went through the consent list, we had a hold on Article 26. I want to recognize that. I don't know exactly who made the hold, but we included Article 26 in the motion practice that we just accomplished. So for whoever held 26 on the consent list, it's now gone. So presumably your concern has been addressed through that process. But obviously, please tell me otherwise if that's not correct. Okay, so now we are left with, out of the town, between the consent list and the list that we just concluded, we're left with Articles 5, 7, 8, 10, 11, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 24, 28, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, and 39. And at this point, we'll proceed through the articles as we typically do. Article 5, Ms. Rosenblum. There you are.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm Betsy Rosenblum, also known as Beth Rosenblum, 5 Strawberry Hill Road. I'm the chair of the Personnel Board. Article 5. I move that the town approve the personnel bylaw as codified in Chapter 31 of the Code of the Town of Southborough as printed in the warrant.
Does that receive a second? It does. Thank you. Ms. Rosenblum?
For those of you who may be new to town meeting, a special welcome. Article 5 is the annual personnel bylaw. You as the town legislature have to approve any revisions to it on an annual basis. It's the role of my board, Personnel Board, to meet and recommend changes. I hope you saw the handouts. Oh, if you want to know more about the work of the Personnel Board, you can read more about us in the town report on page 22. This is my 4th year on the board, 4th year presenting the bylaw to you. What is in the warrant is the full bylaw with all of the changes we're recommending accepted. So if it's voted with no changes, this will be your bylaw for next year. I hope you saw the handouts. There are 2 of them. One is white with blue and red ink. That is a full tracked changes version of everything that came out and went in. And for those of you who prefer a summary, there is a yellow, so full track changes, yellow summary. Thank you to the clerk's office for having those printed for us. Section by section summary of the changes. Before I close, I just want to note if anyone has any questions about the work of the Personnel Board or about beyond town meeting, please contact me. My town email is brosenblum@southboroughma.com. My phone number is 508-740-6684. In closing, I ask you to vote yes on Article 5 and approve the FY '22 Personnel Bylaw. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you. Any question or comment on Article 5? Okay, seeing none, this is a general bylaw change. It requires a majority vote. All those in favor, please raise your red cards. Thank you. All those opposed? Thank you. The motion carries.
Thank you very much.
And we move to Article 7, FY 2022 Operating Budget. Mr. Healy.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I move that the town raise a sum of money not to exceed the sum of $55,283,945 as may be necessary for the town's use, and make appropriations of the same. Transfer from the cemetery perpetual care, $25,000. Transfer from free cash, $1,400,293. Transfer from overlay reserve, $272,031. Transfer from ambulance fund receipts reserve, Fund 23, $411,000. Transfer from septic betterment fund, $30,078. Transfer from reserve SBAB fund balance, $4,017. Transfer from water enterprise fund, $204,695. Transfer from fund 2261, paren 911 revolving, paren $25,000, and that the balance of $52,911,831 be raised and appropriated.
Thank you. Does that receive a second? Thank you. Mr. Healy.
About 3 months ago, when the budget first came out, there was a projected raise of over 9%. Now, I understand that always happens. 9%, however, obviously was on the absolute outside of anything we've seen, I think, in recent years. Through the efforts of department heads, other elected boards, the advisory committee, and the Board of Selectmen, we worked hard to get those numbers down. And this was an unusual year for a variety of reasons, some of them obvious. But in addition, we had things like our public safety building hit for with a large number for the first time. As a result of the efforts of everybody identified, we've gotten the budget down to just north of 3% for a tax increase of the next fiscal year. And I encourage you to support the budget as approved and supported by the advisory committee, by the Board of Selectmen. Thanks.
Okay, this is our annual town budget, folks, and for those of you who may not know, that we proceed through this line by line. It's in a manner similar to what we just did with the consent list a few minutes ago. So I will go through, the budget is printed in your warrant over several pages, starting on page 25 and going through page 34. I will go through that line by line by line. Anyone wishing to hold any one particular departmental budget, please just sing out, let me know, and we'll do that and come and circle back to it. Once we get to the end of that listing process, we'll take all the things that were not held, we'll vote them as one block, and then we'll go through the held items. Whether that requires an amendment or just a discussion, etc., we'll take that up as it goes. Any questions about that process? All right. Again, just yell out hold if you need to. Line 114, moderator. Line 121, elected Board of Selectmen. Line 122, Board of Selectmen. Line 131, Advisory Committee. Line 132, Reserve Fund. Holding 132. Line 135, Town Accountant. Line 136, Audit. Holding 136. Line 140, Elected Board of Assessors. 141, Assessors. 145, Treasurer Collector. 151, Legal. 152, Personnel Board. 153, Special Legal Counsel. 154, Municipal Technology Committee. 155, Technology. Holding 155. 159, Other Operation Support. 160, Elected Town Clerk. 161, Town Clerk. 171, Conservation Commission. 175, Planning Board. 176, Zoning Board of Appeals. 177, Open Space. 182, Economic Development Committee. 192, Public Buildings and Properties Maintenance. 193, Public Accessibility Committee. Line 210, Police Department. Holding 210. Line 220, Fire Department. Line 241, Building Department. Line 291, Civil Defense. 292, Animal Control Officer and Animal Inspector. Lines 400 and 420, Department of Public Works. 510, Elected Board of Health. 512, Board of Health. Holding 512. 541, Council on Aging. 542, Youth Commission. 543, Veteran Services. 610, Library. 630, Recreation Commission. 691, Historical Commission. Holding 691. 692, Memorial Day. I don't have a line number, but it's debt principal and debt interest is our next. 910, Employee Benefits. 930, Budget Capital. 941, Court Judgments. 945, Liability Insurance. 300, Elected School Committee. 301, Southborough Schools. 302, Algonquin Regional High School. 304, Assabet Valley Regional Tech High School. And finally, 305, Norfolk County Agricultural High School. Okay, just to summarize then, I had holds for 132, 155, 210,
136.
I'm sorry, hold on. 136, yes. 155, 210, 512, 691, and that's it. So, on all of the budget items that were not held, we take those up as in a summary fashion. It is a majority vote that passes those items. All in favor, please raise your cards. Thank you. All opposed? All right, that motion carries. So now we will circle back to the held items. We'll start with, and we'll take them in order. We'll start with 132. I believe, Ms. Malinowski, that was you who held 132. Please. If you're not familiar with the process, whoever held will be the first one that I'll ask to speak. So if you did, be ready. Thank you.
And Mr. Moderator, I would like to combine my motion, including budget 132 and budgets 512. So after I make the motion, I'll explain. I move to amend Article 7 by increasing budget 132 reserve fund from $180,000 to $190,000 and reduce budget 512 Board of Health from $153,657 to $132,068 in personnel services from $80,624 to $70,624 in other charges and expenses from $234,281 to $202,692 in total.
Okay, that's a motion to amend. Does it have a second? Second. Okay, it receives a second. Typically, we take the budget lines separately, but I understand that your motion, the two budget categories are related for purposes of your motion, so I'm going to allow that. You want to speak to the reason why you're amending, please?
I would,
And
thank
then
you.
we'll open it up to questions.
Okay, thank you. So there's been much discussion for this budget season through Board of Health, Board of Selectmen, and Advisory. And there's been a lot of collaboration to use as much federal funding as possible. And there's more packages that we're still unclear on in terms of funding. So last week, we came together to reduce the budget for Board of Health to try to capitalize on that funding and see what's going to happen. We will be coming back at a future town meeting after we see what happens with the funding that's available. So that's why the salary lines have been reduced from 153,000 to 132,000. The second piece to this is there's a capital asset in terms of equipment that Board of Health is requesting. So $10,000 has come out of the operating lines in their budget to be moved over to reserve fund so that it can go through the correct procurement process with our new IT manager. So it's just shifting those funds over for the appropriate oversight.
Okay, thank you. Any comment or question on the motion to amend that Ms. Malinowski has offered? All right, seeing none, motion to amend requires a majority vote. All those in favor, please raise your cards. Thank you. All opposed? Thank you. That motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Malinowski. The next hold was Article 136, Audit. I'm not sure who held it. Yes, ma'am. Do you want to go?
My name's Regina McCullough, 5 General Henry Knox. I put a hold on the 136 for the audit. I just wanted to know what the 88% increase was. Was it just because we're having an official audit that costs us, or was there another reason?
Yeah, Brian, why don't you speak to that?
All right, Brian Ballantyne will speak to that question, Ms. McAuliffe, and then we'll see where we are.
Good morning. So it's a fairly simple answer, I hope. Every 2 years, we're required to do an OPEB audit by the state. And this is the year that we are doing that audit. That other OPEB is other post-employment benefits. So we are required to do it. This is the year. The secondary reason is our auditor, our current auditor, who we've had for many years, is going away. Good for him. But we need to find a new auditor, and we had to estimate a new audit contract, which we feel will be a little slightly higher than the current audit. So that's the two reasons.
Thank you, Brian. Yes, Ms. McAuliffe.
Brian, don't move yet, please. I hear what he's saying, and I wanted that explanation, but I do not understand how the actual fiscal 2020, which was 2 years ago, which is when we did the OP, is 20,000 less. You think the new audit firm is going to want 20,000 more than previously?
It could be, because we have a pretty good deal with the current auditor. We're actually going out for quotes as we speak. Unfortunately, the timing didn't work out well for this town meeting. So as you know, probably know, if there's any excess money, we will not spend it. It'll just go into free cash next year as unused money. So that will be a contract that will be bid out. Like a lot of things, we had to estimate a little on the high end, but hopefully it'll be cheaper.
I'd like to modify then and take that down from 52,515 to 42,515.
So, Ms. Is that? If you're suggesting you, is that my mic? Okay. You'd like to move to amend, you're going to have to come up and make your motion with the clerk, please. Take your time, it's okay. if there's no objection, I'll move on to the next hold while she's making that written amendment, and we'll come back to 136. Are you okay with that? Okay.
Mr. Challen is.
Oh, Mr. Challen, please.
I'm here just to prove that I'm here too, Mr. Moderator.
Oh,
Roger
is-
Challen, 29 Oak Hill Road. I'm not sure if I'm in order, but the previous description of Board of Health also mentioned the reserve fund was increasing from 180 to 190,000. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes.
But I don't think I heard the reason for that. I heard the reason for the other, so maybe I missed it.
Only because it's you, yes, go ahead. Only because it's you, Mr. Challen. I would not do this to anybody else. Yes, you did miss it, but here it comes again.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
So it was to move the capital asset for operating piece of equipment for their office over to the reserve fund. So essentially, we moved 10,000 out of Board of Health to go over to reserve fund so that it could go through the appropriate procurement process.
That was where it was. Okay, thank you
Okay?
very much.
Yeah.
Can I make a motion not to indulge Mr. Challen's tardiness anymore?
That's out of order, Mr. Healy. All right, so we good on this, Jim? All right, so Ms. McAuliffe has moved to reduce line 136 by $10,000. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Where'd she go?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Any comment or question on Ms. McAuliffe's motion to amend?
Mr. Moderator?
Yes, Mr. Healy.
Yeah, I'd recommend against voting in favor of the motion. The estimates are, as Mr. Ballantyne indicated, they're based on information that's been gathered and are likely to be reflected in bids that we get. Obviously, there's a bidding process, and weighing and balancing the quality of the responses to a request for proposal with the dollar amounts that are reflected in that is something that the town administration obviously is going to do very carefully. The problem with reducing the amount is that if the estimate of the financial people at the town is close to spot on, then by reducing this, we're going to have to tap the reserve fund. And we try to avoid doing that. So this is in some respects, an additional $10,000 cushion that avoids having to tap our reserve fund for an expense really that's not unanticipated. Based on the information that's been developed so far, it is likely to be more than the $42,000 that this would reduce it to. So I encourage you to vote against the amendment.
Any other comment or question?
Regina McAuliffe, 5 General Henry Knox.
Ms. McAuliffe, go ahead.
I'm going to ask you to vote for the reduction. Think of it as home. We have one contractor, we need to get another. If we don't have some budget to live by, we're gonna go with whomever or whatever we want. If we okay this 52, this 1,000, and somehow they don't have a reason to use a less expensive person through their RFPs, then we're doing the same thing for 2 years from now and 2 years after that.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, the motion to amend that's on the floor requires a majority vote. Oh, I'm sorry, sir. Go right ahead.
Hi, Al Hamilton, 35 Pine Hill Road. I think it's important to remember here that we're not actually approving budgets. We are approving taxes, the taxes to support those budgets. And if we vote the higher number, then we are, in fact, essentially what's called lifting the levy, which is the base amount that we will then look at for years to come. So let's remember that we're not approving budgets, we're approving taxes, taxes which the vast majority of us will have to pay.
Thank you. Any other comment or question? All right, the amendment on the floor requires a majority vote. All those in favor, please raise your red cards. All those opposed? Okay, the amendment fails. And With that, we'll move on to line 155, technology. Ms. McAuliffe, you indicated that was you as well?
I just wanted to know the number of personnel that we will be hiring for the 100. Regina McAuliffe, 5 General Henry.
Hold on, Ms. McAuliffe. Yes, what's your point of order, sir?
We have not actually approved the previous budget yet.
Did I say that?
We
I,
defeated an amendment, so we have not yet approved or disapproved the previous budget.
He is correct.
no, that's correct. You're absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct. Yes, so Mr. Hamilton makes a proper point of order. We do need to vote to dispose of 136 as printed because the amendment was defeated. So this requires a majority vote to approve line 136 as printed. All those in favor, please raise your red cards. Thank you. All opposed? Okay, thank you, and thank you, Mr. Hamilton, for keeping me straight. I appreciate it. Ms. McAuliffe, on 155, you asked for an explanation about, I believe you said how many people are being hired. Who could speak to 155, please?
Mark, is our IT person here, or you want to talk? All right. First town meeting. Hey, Jay.
Folks, this is Jay Montillo, our technology manager. He is standing in the large shoes of Tom LaFlamme. Go ahead, Jay.
And Jay has been here all of about 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So
5 minutes, it feels like. And I'm already at the podium. It's going to be, as of right now, a second full-time help desk or help desk level 2, and also possibly a part-time system admin. Does that answer your question?
Thank you very much, Jay. Welcome.
Thank you.
Regina McAuliffe, 5 General Henry Knox. So is this covering the schools as well as the town administrators? Or what exactly are these 2+ people going to be doing for technology, which I'm very excited we're working on this. I think it's a terrific way to spend money. I just want to know what it's being done.
Yeah, so as far as I know, the school is completely separated from the town. So what it's going to be helping is for me to be at least to manage the town as far as the cybersecurity piece and making sure that everybody is where they need to be with IT. But also with the help desk person, it's going to assist me to at least alleviate some of that pressure that's coming from just the one-offs of printer issues or user issues with help desk stuff that will alleviate that problem. But also with the system admin, it'll help with updating our servers and keeping our servers up to patch, because anytime we go a week or two without patching our systems, we're open to the world as far as cybersecurity. So that's where we're at right now.
I move that we vote to move issue 155 in the amount of $196,000.
Well, you've specified a one-line item in budget.
Sorry. I vote that we approve the 469,285.
Yes, so, okay, you held this, we've discussed it. Mr. Challen, you want to add something, please?
Roger Challen, 29 Oak Hill Road. Just to mention something, and welcome, by the way.
Thank you.
So schools IT is separate from the town.
As far as I know. Yep.
But there is, I guess I'm going to say collaboration at times, especially when a resource was short earlier this year. The schools kind of reached across to help out. So it's not a...
yeah, it's definitely not a division. I definitely reach out to them.
It's not a wall. Okay,
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Matt Probst, 31 Woodland Road, Chair of the Municipal Technology Committee. We basically said we are working with Jason on the staffing, and we are very collaborative in reviewing the specific technology spend, and making sure we as a town are doing so smarter, and we're trying to actually save funds and make sure we are definitely more secure. So we definitely support as is. Thank you.
Any other comment or question on line 155? All right, line 55 is intact as printed. It requires a majority vote. All those in favor, please raise your cards. Thank you. All opposed? Thank you. All right, we are up to a hold on line 210, Police Department. Was it, oh,
Man, do I feel like I'm the only one.
hold on a second, Ms. McCall. Did I hear a point of order? Yes, the motion carried, yes. Thank you. All right, Ms. McCall, if you held 210?
I did.
Go ahead, please.
Only because, typical of this town, the police is always more than anybody else, and I just want to know what we couldn't get to go down again this year.
Do we have,
Chief Paulus is here.
yeah, I don't see him, though. And
Good, long walk, Chief. I'll fill the time.
Ms. McCall, while Chief Paulus is coming up, I'll anticipate a little bit because I'm just me, but I didn't quite understand your question. So if you could clarify what you're asking, I'd appreciate it.
Because I didn't get the warrant earlier, which was my fault, I asked my husband but didn't get it. I'm looking at the numbers, and I say 7.5% for the police. Year in and year in, we don't do it. I mean, we don't somehow keep them like other people. Like the fire department is 3% increase. In addition to this $2,487,000, you know, we have the equipment and other things, and we're leasing, you know, there's 2 police cars elsewhere, and I just feel like maybe it's all wages and health care, but somehow I don't understand how they can't get themselves in check. Last year, we had to give them extra money because they wanted more overtime. So I don't understand it. I need it explained, please.
Okay. Chief Paulus, sir, if you could come to the mic. Basically, the question is what underpins your request for the budget increase?
And Chief, let me jump in first so that it doesn't all fall on you. And the police budget, like all the other budgets, is scrubbed pretty good. And I think it is a misstatement to say it is one or the one that goes up more than others in any particular year. And I suspect Chief Paulus might reference one of the things that's guided both the fire department budgets over the years and the police department budgets over the years is a public safety study that was done for the town of Southborough. Boy, it's now about 20 years ago. And as part of that study, the best practices were identified by the consultants that we hired. And for whatever reason, the fire department got first dibs in terms of bringing its staffing up to the levels that were identified as appropriate in the public safety study. The police lagged for that. And so last year, we brought the police staffing up to the appropriate levels that were identified in that study. And in order to absorb the costs more efficiently, a couple of the individuals started mid-year. And so as a result, it didn't fully impact the FY21 budget, but those positions are fully impacting the FY22 budget. So with that as intro, Chief, I'll hand it over to you.
Absolutely correct. Probably thought that we'd be having this discussion, and we did last year with 2 additional hires. Just a quick recap. Selectman Healy talked about the 2,000 or so public safety study. We're basically running with 2-man minimums on the road. That was vetted 20 years later, or finally up to 3-man minimums, and we're seeing the effect of the additional hires. I believe when I started here in 2014, we had 14 full-time officers. 7 years later, we're finally up to 21 full-time officers, and we have 3 personnel on the road. Police budget also includes the dispatch for both police and fire. But the only reason that there's a significant increase this year is, as Selectman Healy stated, we're seeing the full effects of those 2 additional hires, bringing us up to 21 full-time staff.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Any other question or comment about budget line 210? All right, this requires a majority vote to pass. line 210. All those in favor, please raise your cards. And all those opposed. Thank you, that passes. The next hold was, I believe the next hold was line 512, but we've already addressed that through Ms. Malinowski's amendment. The next hold was line 691, Historical Commission.
Regina McCullough, 5 General Henry. I hope this is the last time I'm getting up. It's small potatoes, but I wanted to know what the Historical Commission was doing to increase their budget by a third, because I think they've done great things so far, and I just want to know what they have in mind to do more, or whether, like the police, what they've already started is costing them and they need to fund themselves in the next 6 or 8 months.
All right, I'm canvassing quickly and looking for movement or a hand from somebody from the Historical Commission.
Yeah, I don't
All
see
right,
anybody
I
either.
will do my best to fill in. Oh, Ms. Battles is
okay,
jogging over.
Okay, yep.
Can I do a point of order for a minute?
What is your point of order?
Well, I don't know if it's a point of order, but a question. Freddie Gillespie, 70 out Southfield Road. Everybody on the other side over, I shouldn't say everyone. Are we being counted? Because nobody thinks anyone's looking over there when we raise our cards.
Okay, well, first of all, excellent point, thank you. I don't know if my peripheral vision matches yours, but my job is to declare a majority. I will make a point to make sure that everybody who's raising cards is taking a view.
Thank you. We just want to be sure we were within the hall.
It's very fair.
And Kate, very quickly, I'll just say that obviously the Board of Selectmen appoints the Historical Commission. We work closely with them, sometimes butt heads, but that's not a bad thing. And they do good work, and I think it's reflected in an awful lot of what's happening in the historical areas for Southborough. So with that, Ms. Battles.
I'm sorry. So Kate Battles, Treasurer of the Historical Commission. I might have missed the question. I was working out back.
The question is, your budget reflects a almost 35% increase, and the question is that something that's new this year? Are you catching up to things that have come from prior years? You know, are you doing more than you have in the past? What's underpinning the increase?
Okay. A couple years ago, our budget was $3,500, and then it went down to $2,500. Currently, we're responsible for paying the internet at the Historical Museum, which actually just went up to $110 a month. So that's the main reason for the increase that we've asked. We also have a historical sign program and like to gift 5 to 10 signs a year. And we are hoping to hire a recording secretary as well.
All right, thank you. Other comment or question on line 691? All right, hearing none, this requires a majority vote as printed. All those in favor? All opposed? All right, motion carries. That's the last held item. At this point, as is very typical, Mr. Ballantyne is putting together what we call a wrap-up motion because we did move some things around. And when he indicates he's
minutes.
ready, yeah, just be a couple of minutes. When he indicates he's ready, I think we'll wait for him on this one because I think it's probably not a long time. Typically, we might go on to the next article, but then we'll be in the middle of that one. Obviously, Article 7 is one of our more complicated. Yeah, we're ready. That takes a little bit longer, so we'll be clipping right along. Hopefully after this. Go ahead, Mr. Healy, with your final motion.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Moderator. I move that the town vote to raise a sum of money not to exceed the sum of $55,262,356 as may be necessary for the town's use, and make appropriations of the same. Transfer from the cemetery perpetual care, $25,000. Transfer from free cash, $1,400,293. Transfer from 9/11 revolving, $25,000. Transfer from overlay reserve, $272,031. Transfer from the ambulance fund receipts reserve, Fund 23, $411,000. Transfer from Septic Betterment Fund, $30,078. Transfer from Reserve SBAB Fund Balance, $4,017. And transfer from Water Enterprise Fund, $204,695,000. And that the balance of $52,890,242 be raised and appropriated.
Does that receive a second? So I think if I followed it correctly, the overall budget has been reduced by about 20K, and that is now the motion on the floor. Requires a majority vote. All those in favor, please raise your cards. All opposed. Thank you. The motion carries. Article 8, fiscal year 22 water enterprise budget. Ms. Malinowski.
I'm just going to leave this here. I'm going to be right back.
Try not to mess up your papers. Okay. I move that $2,700,256 be appropriated for the Water Enterprise Fund, and that $204,695 be included in the appropriations from the general fund for indirect costs and be allocated to the Water Enterprise Fund, and that $2,904,951 be raised as follows. FY22 revenues, $2,904,951.
Does that receive a second? It does. Ms. Malinowski.
So this is the annual budget for the water fund that does not come out of the tax rate. It comes through raising, or through your tax bills if you have town water.
Any comment or question on Article 8? Seeing none, requires a majority vote. All those in favor, please raise your cards. All opposed. Thank you. Motion carries. Article 10, Mr. Healy, capital budget non-borrowing.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I move that the town raise and appropriate $115,000 for library interior renovations, $40,000 for townhouse bathroom renovations, $30,000 for a DPW chipper, $12,000 for a DPW equipment trailer, $325,000 for DPW road maintenance, $30,000 for fire thermal imaging cameras, $20,000 for fire hose and nozzle replacement, $40,000 for fire turnout gear fund, $18,200 for police defibrillators, and $101,000 for police cruisers.
Does that receive a second? It does. Mr. Healy.
I have an amendment to the main motion.
All right.
Mr. Moderator, I move to amend the main motion of Article 10 by striking the words $40,000 for fire turnout gear funds and $18,200 for police defibrillators, semicolon, and.
Does that receive a second? All right, Mr. Healy, can you explain your amendment, please?
Sure. The basis for the amendment is additional donations that have been received by St. Mark's and the Fay School. For the $40,000 turnout gear, that is being covered 50% each, $20,000, by 20 by St. Mark's, 20 by Fay. And as an addendum to that, St. Mark's has made a commitment to cover the turnout gear for at least the next 3 years. And we're having discussions with Fay about whether or not they're going to match that. And the defibrillators is, that amount is being covered by a donation by St. Mark's, which again, for both St. Mark's and Fay, are in addition to donations that they have made regularly in the past and are continuing to make going forward.
All right, any comment or question on the amendment to the motion on Article 10? All right, seeing none, the amendment requires a majority vote. All those in favor, please raise your cards. All opposed. All right, that motion carries. So the article is now amended. Two line items have been struck out. Any comment or question on the motion as now amended?
Mr. Moderator, just very briefly.
Go ahead.
Article 10, one of the sort of underlying themes for Article 10 is last year the concept was raised to sort of reinvigorate a capital committee for the town. There had been one back in the day, actually not too far back in the day, but it had lapsed over the last 5 to 10 years. And a pretty compelling argument was made that we should at least give it a 1-year shot. And you'll see there's an article that addresses that later on in the town meeting. Anyway, with a number of members of advisory as well as some independent members of the town, member of the Board of Selectmen, there was an ad hoc capital committee. And at least from my perspective, and I think from most people's perspectives who had dealings with them, they did an extraordinary job in terms of identifying and prioritizing capital expenditures that needed to be made in the short term, capital expenditures that could be addressed in ways other than direct purchases. And that's why, and again, in a later article, there's some leasing arrangements that are talked about. And it's one of the reasons why we're proposing that there be a capital committee going forward. Southborough, again, in my perspective, more than got its money's worth from the capital planning committee ad hoc for the last year, and this article and the items in it is a reflection of that.
All right, any other comment or question on the main motion as amended on Article 10? Yes, sir.
Hi, Grant Farrington, 58 Flag Road. Yeah, I'd like to propose an amendment to the current article to strike letter K, police cruisers 2. Yeah.
So you're talking about $101,000?
Yes.
All right. You need to come forward and make that motion in writing with the clerk, please. For those that don't know, when we are inside at the Trotter Auditorium, in more recent years, we had really gotten a process down to where amending motions was very fast. It was almost in real time on the screen. Our IT folks had a lot to do with putting that together, Vanessa Hale, et cetera. With any luck, the next time we gather, we'll be back inside at Trotter. So I appreciate your patience while we do amendments sort of the old-fashioned way today. All right, Mr. Farrington has made a motion to amend the current motion by striking the words $101,000 for police cruisers. First and foremost, does that receive a second? I see a second. All right, Mr. Farrington, do you want to speak to your proposed amendment, please?
Hi, sure, yeah. It just seems that every year we appropriate money for the police department to buy new police cruisers, and I think most reasonable people don't think it's a great investment to buy a new car every year. So I don't understand why they can't use their police cruisers for multiple years instead of just buying a new one. It seems like a waste of money to me. Thank you.
All right. Chief Paulus, if you want to, I'm going to go to you next on that one, and then we'll call for any other comments or questions.
We do have a formula for the replacement of the cruisers. We currently keep 12 cruisers in our fleet. We keep 6 of them that are frontline cruisers responding every day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year to emergencies around the town. And the formula is we want to keep those frontline cruisers at 100,000 miles or less. So once they hit 100,000, we move them up the line to the admin cars, and then also replacements in case the other cars go down. But we try to keep those 6 frontline cars 100,000 or less, and we replace them, as needed. So some years we might need none, some years we might need 1, some years we might need 2. But this formula's been in place since at least 2016, when I got here. All of this is vetted through presentations, throughout the last 5 years or so, if you want to go and look up what the formula is. I invite anybody that wants to come and inspect the fleet, make an appointment with me. I'll show you some of these cruisers that move up the line. But bottom line is, we want our first responders and at least a dependable vehicle, less than 100,000 miles. And it's worked well. If you do a poll of the other towns, a lot of them are retiring them completely at around between 80 and 100,000. So we're probably a little more conservative than most towns. But like I said, anybody wants to make an appointment, I'll come show them the entire fleet.
All right, thank you. Other comments or questions? Mr. Malinowski.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Jason Malinowski, 1 William Cleary Lane, and also the chair of the Capital Planning Committee. As Mr. Healy, and thank you for your comments, Mr. Healy, noted, the Capital Planning Committee spent hours on each item that's in front of you today. And if you knew the number of items that actually aren't even in front of you, if you go back through the hours of discussion, we've brought what we think is a very reasonable request. We've studied the chief's inventory. We've looked at the cruisers. We've looked at the mileage. We've looked at his staffing that was just approved as part of Article 7 to make sure that we are putting the officers in the safest vehicles. I'll also remind town meeting that last year there was only 1 cruiser approved, so this just happens to be the year that we have 2. We do expect, based on current mileage projections, that it would be only 1 next year, and we continue to assess that with the chief on an ongoing basis, and as he alluded to, there could be years where there's none. Thank you.
Thank you. Over here, please.
Yes, Ken Boyd, 10 Ashley Road. Just out of curiosity, what's the mileage on the 11th and 12th vehicles in the fleet?
Chief Paulus.
I believe the 2 that we're going to replace, Cruiser 112, which is basically a detail car right now, that has approximately 132,000 miles, and the detective's car that we replaced this year, moving them down the line, that has 128,000 miles, and basically they're worth absolutely nothing. The vendor's going to be good enough to give us $500 to roll them out of the lot. And then the other cruisers will move down the line to replace them. Like I said, anybody wants to come and inspect them, make an appointment, and I'll take you out to see them.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Jim Caleri, 51 Central Street. One thing you got to remember, these aren't like our own personal automobiles. These are response vehicles. Sometimes the pressure on them, the speed on them is needed to be there for the emergencies they deal with. The town cannot afford the liability of a breakdown and crash of a police cruiser over 100,000 miles. I just traded a Ram pickup that has 85,000 miles on it. It's 4 years old. The warranty was running out at that point. And I realized when I get close to 100,000 miles, my maintenance cost, I would be losing money on the value of the trade-in because of the mileage. And I think the town is smart to cover its liability responsibility. That cruiser crashes, not only do we end up paying for the cruiser, that's the minor part. We pay for the loss of life or damage. Having spent 45 years on your fire department, driving your fire equipment, no way would I ever consider this town to be responsible by allowing equipment to get into the point where it's up in that mileage that these police cruisers are. I would never conceive keeping my vehicle 100,000 miles for any reason unless I was financially totally strapped and had no other choice. I think we have no choice but to keep this current fleet where it needs to be, so we don't 2 or 3 years down the road end up with 5 cruisers or 4 cruisers needed to be done, or paying the tremendous cost of a liability of a possible loss of a life because of a crash, because of negligence on the town. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comment or question on Mr. Farrington's amendment? Yes. Oh. By the way, obviously, tons of volunteers today, including the young people who are sanitizing the mic each time somebody speaks. We appreciate it. All right, seeing no other comment or question, the motion on the floor is the motion to amend Article 10 to strike the $101,000 for police cruisers. So you're voting on whether to amend the main motion at this time. If you are in favor of amending the main motion, please raise your red cards. All those opposed to the amendment? All right, so the amendment fails. We're now back to the main motion on Article 10, which is as printed except for the strikeout of $40,000 for turnout gear and $18,200 for police defibrillators. So now we are voting, sorry, sir, you have a comment or question?
Yeah, I have one question. Tim Fling, 18 Main Street. Item E, the DPW road maintenance. Can we have a little explanation of what that line item specifically is going to cover and why it's not coming from a different budget?
I'm looking for Ms. Galligan. And I found her. I'll let Ms. Galligan, who is the department head at the Department of Public Works, address the question.
Karen Galligan, DPW Superintendent. So our road maintenance that we do, we gather up money each year through this road maintenance article. It handles a road paving contract when we gather up enough money. So currently we have Chapter 90 money, which comes from the states, reimbursed. We allocate that to certain projects. Currently, all that money is allocated and all our roadway money is allocated. So we're in a process right now of gathering. So this $250 will be added into next year's Chapter 90, which 2022. Then we'll have more money next year, and then we'll probably let a $750,000 contract out. That does basically a milling and paving, or we have a few roads that we can mill and pave because we have enough asphalt. It can sometimes we'll do the reclaims, which we had been doing a lot when we had bigger contracts, like over $1 million. But it's not allocated to a specific road yet because it's not enough money to do that much.
Ms. Galligan, can you clarify, I think part of the question was, why is this a capital item and not coming out of some other line?
Oh, by being a capital item, it can gather and it can accumulate over several years, so we don't have to spend it within the fiscal year.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comment or question on the main motion, Article 10? Okay, seeing none, this requires a majority vote. All those in favor, please raise your red cards. All those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Article 11, capital budget borrowing. Ms. Braccio.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Good afternoon, everyone. I motion that the town accept
Lisa,
I'm sorry.
Pull it down.
All right. Well, I'm short, and so everybody's going to have to pull it back up after me.
That's all right.
All right, thank you. Again, welcome, everyone. Thank you. I move that the town accept Article 11 as printed in the warrant.
Does that receive a second? It does. Ms. Braccio, please speak to your motion.
Thank you. This is a new article this year. The form of borrowing on this, instead of being appropriated through town meeting, it's still being appropriated, but it's using a lease program, something different that the capital committee has come up with to try and not have this all hit the tax rate currently at this town meeting. So these are for the first year payments.
Okay, there's a chart of 4 pieces of equipment that we're going to be leasing, and the first year payments are listed there, and the total of those payments is the amount of the article. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Any comment or question on Article 11? I see someone. Please.
Al Hamilton, 35 Pine Hill Road. I'd like to just understand the logic of leasing. When you lease a piece of equipment, there is an implied interest rate, which is typically going to be a commercial interest rate, as opposed to borrowing and purchasing a piece of equipment. Then the town can borrow at rates significantly lower than the commercial rates. And so I'd like to understand the economics of this decision.
Thank you, sir. And I see Mr. Pfaff from the Capital Committee is heading to the microphone. Andrew had brought this forward.
Sure. So Andrew Pfaff, 50 Oak Hill Road, also a member of the Capital Planning Committee. The leasing concept is not like your normal car lease. These are financial leases. So basically it's the full amount. So it's just like doing a bonding, and you're going to pay the full thing. The interest rate is actually about 50 basis points lower than our current bonding rate would be for these items. So it just makes more fiscal sense.
Thank you. Any other comment or question? All right. This is a borrowing article. This article requires a 2/3 majority to be enacted. All those in favor of Article 11, please raise your cards. All those opposed? Okay, I declare a 2/3 majority on Article 11.
Thank you, everyone.
We move to Article 18, CPA, Calander Field, Mr. Mills.
Mr. Moderator, I move to see if the town will vote to appropriate $238,750 from the CPA Fund 2021 budgeted reserve for the renovation and restoration of the Calander Field located at Calander Drive in Southborough, parcel ID 56000-012-0, and as further printed in the warrant.
Does that receive a second? It does. Mr. Mills.
I think most everyone recalls over the last 5 town meetings that we've had, there's been debate about Calander Field and what to do with it. There was Recreation went through a thorough review with the Selectmen, vetting that this restoration project would work to restore the field for use for the town. And this is their request to restore the field so it can be used for the children of the town.
Thank you. Any comment or question on Article 18? Seeing none, this requires a majority vote. All those in favor of Article 18, please raise your cards. All opposed? Motion carries. Just as a quick, thank you, Mr. Mills. Just as a quick reminder, folks, the town clerk has reminded me that free bottled water, sunscreen, et cetera, is all here for your use. We just want you to stay as comfortable as possible. All right, Article 19, CPA, St. Mark's Bell Tower. I believe Mr. Smith is coming up to speak to that.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to appropriate $300,000 for the restoration and preservation of the historic St. Mark's Bell Tower located at 27 Main Street, Southborough for historic purposes. $23,061.76 from the CPA Historic Preservation Reserve Fund, $276,938.24 from fiscal year 21 CPA fund balance. Project to be completed in conformance with details as presented to the members of the CPC and to be documented in the application and signed memorandum of understanding. Said funds to be expended under the direction of the Community Preservation Committee and the town treasurer.
Does that receive a second?
Second.
It does. Mr. Smith?
I believe we have some representatives of St. Mark's here to give a quick presentation.
So can you just quickly introduce yourself to the folks, and then whoever's coming up can do the same, please.
Certainly. Ben Smith, I'm the Vice Chair of the Community Preservation Committee. I actually don't know the name of the St. Mark's reps who are going to be...
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Please.
Good afternoon. My name is Matthew Spencer, and I'm representing St. Mark's Church. I've been a resident and registered voter in Southborough since 2009. I live at 17 Parkerville Road. And I've been serving in capacity as the treasurer of St. Mark's Church since 2017. The clock tower was first constructed 130 years ago as a freestanding structure designed in the popular Gothic Revival style, and the three-sided mechanical clock has been in continuous operation ever since. The construction was funded by Charles and Elizabeth Choate in honor of their daughter Helen, who died at the untimely age of 19. The Southborough Historical Commission and the Massachusetts Historical Commission both recognize the clock tower as eligible for placement on the National Register of Historic Places. And in fact, Southborough asked St. Mark's a few years ago if we would participate in the town's application to get the entire Southborough Town Center designated as a nationally recognized historic district. Moreover, the chartering of many New England towns for a period was granted through the requirement that a meeting house, oftentimes a church, first be established. This is what accounts for the high frequency of very old historic churches appearing in many town centers throughout New England. I think we might all agree that this is what makes a New England town a New England town. Just take a second and try to imagine what the town center might look like without these historic landmarks. This is the reason why the historic preservation and the use of CPA funds towards them is so important. During regular maintenance in 2017, we discovered that the clock tower needed extensive renovations. St. Mark's hired the architectural preservation firm Spencer, Sullivan & Voigt to do a comprehensive review, as they are one of the leading restoration architects throughout all of the Commonwealth. Notably, they are the same firm that's engaged in the restoration of the Southborough Library as well as the Town Hall. Their conclusion from this review noted that the clock tower could become unsafe, it could become a safety hazard within the next 3 to 5 years. Recognizing the urgency, we did complete phase 1 of the restoration project in 2019, using more than $50,000 of St. Mark's funds, matched by a grant received from the Mass Historical Commission. Collectively, the leadership team of St. Mark's and its congregation recognizes its responsibility to be a good steward and custodian of this historic beacon in our community, committing $350,000 raised through a capital campaign. And just to put this amount into a little bit of perspective, on an annual basis, St. Mark's receives total annual pledges of about $275,000 from less than 100 individuals and families. And it's from this relatively small community that we raised an average about $5,000 per individual pledge, which I think is quite extraordinary. Through our capital campaign process, we explored many avenues to raise funds. This included reaching out directly to legacy families, we reached out directly to St. Mark's School, and we reached out to Fay School. And I should say, because this has come up a bit in public forums, while we share a name and while we share a long ago history, any formal connection between St. Mark's Church and St. Mark's School ended more than 100 years ago. So in the end, it was our own congregation that stood tall in the need to preserve this historic clock tower. And so, with the funds from the capital campaign and the funds requested in Article 19, we are committed to completing the restoration, hopefully either this summer or as soon as contractors are available. And lastly, in response to the commentary that this article only serves to benefit a few, I would promote the motion that any recognizable historic landmark serves to benefit the whole of the community in the form of increased or maintained property values. And you might ask, how could you support such a claim? And I would suggest just do a simple Google search, type in Southborough town images, and you'll find the image of the clock tower multiple times. And one such image may actually be traced to a Heisler and Madsen Properties webpage, which in my opinion supports that the real estate community as a whole recognizes the clock tower as representing something valuable. And for added emphasis, one particular Southborough real estate agent regularly prepares a dedicated page to highlight her properties. And always included in these marketing materials is a section or a page dedicated to the history of Southborough. And I would say that these type of marketing materials provides further evidence that the history of our town and the preservations of its landmarks is a contributing factor to our property values. And one of the quotes from the About Southborough's section of this webpage says, "The Fay, Burnett, and Choate families, along with hundreds of others, had a major impact on the development of the town as we know it today. Buildings such as St. Mark's Church, St. Mark's School, the library, and the community house and Fay School were all derived from or were direct products of these families." And I would say, since we all have phones and mobile devices, if you have a minute, if you're curious to see what these marketing materials look like, interestingly enough, a property came on the market earlier this week, and it was on Choate Lane. And if you recognize Choate, that is the name of the family that provided the funds for the original construction. And if you go to that webpage, which is at forchoate.com, and again, just to repeat, at forchoate.com, you'll see the prominence with which the history of Southborough is displayed. And with that, I thank you for your consideration to this article. I'd be happy to answer any questions, as well as we do have other representatives from St. Mark's here that can answer questions. And I appreciate your time this morning.
Okay, thank you. Comment or question about the motion on Article 19? Yes, sir.
Good morning. My name is Whitney Beals, 10 Chestnut Hill Road. I'm not speaking to the motion per se, which I do support, but I'm curious to know how much funding will be left in the CPA accounts after we approve at least two articles that are before this meeting. We've already approved one.
I think that is an extremely proper question. It does fit within the motion. Mr. Mills, can you address that?
So you want to know how much is total would be left, or with new funds coming in, because it gets pretty complicated.
Yes, sir. And I know it's difficult to figure what's going to be coming in the new tax year, but yes, it would be, I think, very instructive to have a ballpark number.
So there'd be approximately, about, I think, $100,000 left over if all the articles from the CPC get approved this year. But then we have the funds coming in that we anticipate for next year and matching and whatnot.
Could you tell us, too, what the current state match is for funds raised in the municipalities?
I believe, Freddie, was it 23%? 25? Oh, 1 second, Whitney. want to film it? The last time was 28% for the matching.
Thank
So-
you.
So, okay, all right, thank you. Other comment or question? I'll come to this mic next.
Hello, Andrea Hamilton, 119 Northborough Road. I am a Southborough resident and a Jewish American, and as such, I take umbrage with the statement that small New England towns find our value in the churches at their center. What brings community to me in Southborough has nothing to do with our religious institutes, because there is no religious institute in Southborough that aligns with my values currently. So I say, when we vote where our dollars go, we vote our values. And if we vote to support this, we choose a religious institute as being a central value of Southborough. And in doing that, I think we leave out a significant portion of our population and also potentially isolate others who may seek to find community in Southborough. That's all I want to say.
Thank you. Let's go over here.
Katura Martin, 75 Deerfoot Road. Mr.
Hold
Moderator.
on one second.
Yeah.
Can we get the mics? Let's do the sanitizing when people aren't talking. I appreciate it very much, but let's try to time it a little better. I just want to make sure everybody gets heard. Go ahead, please.
Okay, so I realized in the beginning you said that you weren't going to routinely ask the Board of Selectmen and Advisory to explain their positions, but I noticed in the warrant that Advisory was opposed to, or did not support this, and the BOS had yet to declare how they felt, so.
Okay, so that's appropriate. Mr. Malinowski, you're going to speak regarding Advisory's recommendation, and then we'll have Ms. Brascio speak with regard to Selectmen's recommendation. You go here.
Jason Malinowski, 1 William Cleary Lane, member of the Advisory Committee. A good chunk of our members were actually conflicted as parishioners of the church. Myself and 2 other members were not, so I'm speaking on their behalf. Since the warrant was printed, we did have 1 member change their mind and is in support. There were 2 of us that are not in support. The main rationale was consideration of, I think it was mentioned in the presentation, about funding that benefits the broader population and whether tax money should be used for that. So that was the main reason for declining it, or not approving it, and we're recommending not to approve it. And then the other thing that was factored in is the article that comes after this that deals with the townhouse next door. And, you know, I think we'll close with, you know, what is the best use of tax funds that are raised through the CPA Act is really what we wrestled with when coming with our vote.
All right, thank you. Ms. Brascio.
Hi, thank you. So the Board of Selectmen just revoted this article at our last meeting, and it was 2 in support and 3 against for some of the similar reasons as Mr. Malinowski.
All right, thank you.
I have a follow-up question.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, and so if this did not move forward, could these funds be allocated to affordable housing and other causes, or do they have to be used for historical purposes?
Mr. Mills, Chair of CPC, I'm going to. Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. I'm a year behind. Sorry, Mr. Smith. Second time today.
The answer is yes. If they're not expended through this town meeting, they'll be available next year for future applications to the CPC.
Outside of historical purposes, or do they have to be used for historical reasons?
Just want to make sure I get this right. I believe they will not have to be used specifically for historical purposes next year.
CPC has different buckets?
Yeah, I'm sorry to not have the answer off the top of my head. Is it all out of the historical bucket? It is. Okay, excuse me. I had a misapprehension there. Our budget is divided into several buckets. This potential project is proposed to be funded exclusively out of our historical bucket. If these funds aren't expended, then next year they'll be available to fund another historical project.
I have one more question. Can I?
Well, is it related to that?
It's not related to that, but it's related to the article.
Okay, I'm gonna go to others, and you can go to the back of the line and come back as we go along. Yes, over here, please.
Al Hamilton, 35 Pine Hill Road. I oppose this. I think that these funds could be better spent on any of a variety of things. I also want to point out that the town, through the CPC, has literally spent millions and millions and millions of dollars on a short stretch of road starting at Route 85 and heading over to Chestnut Hill Farm. This one short stretch of Route 30, which is a very modest part of our town, has absorbed millions and millions and millions of CPA dollars. Nobody's spending CPA dollars in my neighborhood, and I suspect no one is spending CPA dollars in your neighborhood, and I think it's time that we spread that money a little more broadly across our community. Thank you.
Okay. Right over here.
Yeah, this is Chris Robbins, 39 Parkerville Road. The first thing is I have a question, and then I'm going to make a statement. Could you carefully explain how the CPA funding works, how the money is brought in, and how the decision-making is made? I think it would be helpful to clarify that. I am a member of the St. Mark's Church, and I want you to know the lady who talked about the Jewish faith. I've never been in a conversation that didn't think of this community as a community of one. And if there are people who don't feel that, then we need to talk and have a discussion. But I'm proud to say, as a parishioner, that kind of conversation has been constructive, thoughtful, and we think of everyone as being a part of this community. And that bell tower is a historical example of what's happened here in New England. And I also want to say this town has an extraordinary record of preserving the unique historical, I call iconic buildings. And I think, for example, I can't wait till we see the final touches on the Burnett House of a family that left a legacy that exceeds anything we know. So I look forward to and I trust, and the Burnett family was involved with other buildings, including the tower, as I understand it. So I leave it up to you to explain not only how the state allocates funds for church organizations, but how you have created, how the formula works. Thank you.
So can you speak briefly to where the money, how the money comes in, how it's allocated among the buckets, et cetera?
The Community Preservation Act there's a little bit of complication to it. I'll try to give sort of a 10,000-foot overview. The funding comes from a 1% surcharge on property taxes in Southborough, just to give the simplest summary of it. And then every year, the state calculates a match that goes out to various communities who have adopted the Community Preservation Act. As we heard earlier this year, the state's match was 28% of what was brought in from the 1% surcharge. That's where the funding comes in. Under the Community Preservation Act, these funds can be spent only on certain types of projects. These are open space, historical, affordable housing, and recreation. As the funds come in, as we said earlier, they're divided up into buckets where funds in a given bucket, say the historical bucket, can only be spent on historical projects. The Community Preservation Committee, our role as a steward of these funds is to accept applications for the expenditure of the funds, review the applications, make sure they comport with the Community Preservation Act, evaluate the project, and then give a recommendation to town meeting, or forward it to town meeting for town meeting to exercise its collective wisdom on the decision whether or not to fund the project.
Thank you. Over here, please.
Hi, I'm Michelle Hart, 60 Deerfoot Road. I'm a member of St. Mark's Church. Am I getting feedback?
Sound fine.
Fine, okay, thanks. I wanted to remind folks that the Southborough Master Plan talks about in Chapter 6 natural, historic, and cultural resources. And it states that these resources are valued very highly by Southborough residents as expressed during the public meetings throughout that process. It directs you to Appendix A, the list of Southborough Historic Properties Survey, And within that, 81 individual properties are identified along with 12 districts. In St. Mark's Church, the entire property is identified as one of those districts. So it does have historic significance to the town that the town folks have already made clear in previous meetings.
Thank you. Right over here, please.
Betsy Rosenblum, 5 Strawberry Hill Road. At the outset, I just want to say I'm really conflicted about this. I've lived in Southborough with my family since 1999. I've been a community volunteer for much of that time. I come to town meeting and I try, whenever my conscience allows, to give deference to my fellow citizens. People sit throughout the year. A lot of the folks here don't even see it. Well, maybe you do on Zoom. They work really hard, and I try whenever possible not to question that and to give deference to my fellow residents. That said, I have a follow-up question to the gentleman, and I apologize, the son and my age, I don't remember anyone's name anymore. Someone asked a question about the process, and I have a question about that, and I have a separate question, so I'll go to the back of the line for my second question if the moderator wants me to. First question, what is the standard of review of the Community Preservation Committee? When you pass on this article for town meeting to decide, are you endorsing it wholeheartedly? Are you saying it meets a statutory level that will pass it on to you? I'd like to know how my CPC committee, other than voting to pass it on to us, how do you feel about it after studying the issue? I'm not sure I heard what you really think of it, other than that you sending it to us.
Mr. Smith?
Yes. First, the level of review, I believe you asked about, and we do make sure that the project comports with the Community Preservation Act. As you can imagine, this is a somewhat complicated project from that perspective. So what we did was we sought a legal opinion from town council. I think we received a total of 2, perhaps 3 legal opinions over the past couple of years over this, and Attorney Cipriano assured us that the project is fundable under the Community Preservation Act. In terms of the views of the individual members, it's my recollection we had one member, well, our chair recused himself. We had one member vote against the project, and I, during the meeting, acknowledged that this was a very complicated one, and my personal feeling was that I was going to be voting against it at town meeting. However, I thought it was appropriate to forward this to town meeting, to, as I say, for town meeting to exercise its collective wisdom on this complicated issue. The other members, you know, I can't speak for them. I will say the remaining members, I believe, voted in favor of forwarding this to town meeting.
I think you answered her question.
Okay.
I think you did. Thank you very much. I appreciate your honesty. May I ask my second question?
Go right ahead.
Okay. I understand there is no legal relationship and no obligation from St. Mark's School. I'm asking you if that impassioned plea that we just heard about the importance, centrality of this building to Southborough as a whole, was that made to St. Mark's, and how much are they willing, to St. Mark's School, and how much are they willing to contribute?
So I think you'd be best to address that.
So everything that I just shared earlier is the way that we at St. Mark's view the project. And that's precisely how we explained it to St. Mark's as we made our plea to request funds from them as well as Fay.
And
So-
the second part of the question, have they pledged any funds? St. Mark's School pledged funds?
No.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
You're welcome. Over here, please.
Hello, Janet Maney, 21 Skylar Drive. Is that too loud? I was curious, when CPC funds were used for the library, we're required to get a preservation restriction so that that facade is saved in perpetuity. I see that for the townhouse use of CPC, that's also a requirement. And it's been a requirement for the Burnett House and other things. I was curious as to why this isn't a requirement for this funding, since the church is even less under the town's control than some of these other things.
Thank you. Yeah, it is a requirement for this project, and the reason you don't see it in the town warrant article is, I'm going to say about 18 months ago, St. Mark's received a grant for some emergency repairs to the bell tower from the Massachusetts Historical Commission. The MHC, as a condition of awarding the grant, required a preservation restriction be placed on the bell tower. I mentioned that we've had we've requested legal opinions from town council. One of them was, will this preservation restriction that was prepared for Mass Historical meet the requirements of the Community Preservation Act? He reviewed it, and he said that it does. So that PR is already in place, in fact.
Thank you.
All right, over here.
Yes, I'm David Eckberg, 5 High Street. I am not an Episcopalian, but if I were, I would still be very strongly opposed to this. This is a flagrant violation of church and state. We should all understand this from 7th grade physics, 7th grade civics, I should say. If the 100 members of St. Mark's Church cannot afford to do this entire project, it is not the responsibility of the taxpayers to pick up the difference. This sets a very dangerous precedent if we were to vote for this, a very dangerous precedent. And I would say that even though we are a reasonably affluent town, this is not Greenwich, Connecticut. We don't have $300,000 to come to the aid of a small number of people who can't come up with the total amount of financing that they need. So I keep this separation of church and state in mind when you vote for this. This is a very, very dangerous precedent if we do it. I've already spoken.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate that. Let's go over here to my left.
I'm Claire Reynolds, 104 Main Street, and to tack on to what Al Hamilton said about the amount of money that has been spent in that particular area, I think that one of the things that should be looked at is distributing that money around town a lot better than it's currently been distributed. A lot of projects, I'm sure, on the south side of Route 9 or other areas of the town, as he said, he lives on Pine Hill Road. For the record, I actually live on Main Street. I am a half-mile west of the bell tower, right, on Main Street. Second point is to Mr. Mills' explanation of the amount of money that would be left. I believe that if this project is funded, there is some restriction on, or further limitation or reduction of the bonding capacity of the CPA funds that would impact other, possibly other of the 2 buckets that are still left. And my last thing that I'll end up with is this is taxpayer money. So therefore, it should go to an institution that at least pays taxes, which St. Mark's Church doesn't. Just my opinion. Thank you.
Mr. Mills, do you want to address the question about bonding?
I do. And first of all, I look forward to Ms. Reynolds and Mr. Hamilton's proposals for next year for the CPC. We're always looking for new proposals and applications, so hopefully we see those coming in. The other piece, in terms of the bonding capacity, our bonding capacity is limited by how much we're actually going to bond. We have the cash, it's sitting there. This would not limit our bonding capacity. It's the next article for the townhouse, which is going to severely use up an extraordinary amount of the bonding capacity. Does that answer your question?
I think so.
Thank you.
Right over here, man. Oh, I'm sorry. There's somebody behind you, Al?
We've both spoken
Okay.
once.
All right. So go, Al, you go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just a little bit confused about the buckets of money, and I'm hoping you can clarify this. I understand that the $23,061 comes from monies specifically dedicated to historic preservation. And then there's, the second part of the request is for the $276,000, which comes from the CPA fund balance. Are those funds solely for the purpose of historic preservation, or are those funds that can also be used for affordable housing, open space, and recreation, as well as historic preservation?
Mr. Smith.
I believe the breakup that you see here in the article, to further complicate things, the funds as they come into under the CPA surcharge and in the state match are broken up into buckets. Those are further segregated by year also, and I believe the 23,061 is what's remaining in the historical bucket from a prior year. Is that correct, Andrew? Do I have that right? I want to make sure I get this right for you, Mr. Hamilton.
I think the question is the 276 eligible for things other than historical if it's not spent here? Is that fair?
That's correct.
Yeah. I think, you know.
And that can or cannot be used for other. It can. Okay, the preservation reserve. Okay, the 23,061 is limited to use for funding historical projects. I'm told that the 276,938 from the reserve fund, if not expended on this project, next year could be used to fund any other project that's eligible under CPA, not specifically historical.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Nobody's over. Oh, yes, go ahead, please.
Again, Katura Martin, 75 Deerfoot Road. There are many structures in town that would qualify as historical. I'm wondering if CPC funds have ever been given to any other religious institution in town or another private property owner.
With regard to another religious organization in town, the answer is no. With regard to another private property owner in town, the answer is yes, and that is 84 Main Street, the Burnett House, was funded through a bond that's paid for by under the Community Preservation Act. With regard to CPA funds being used by other municipalities in Massachusetts for the historical preservation of religious buildings, I don't recall the exact number of times it's been done, but it's been done several times. I'm going to say on the order of dozens.
Okay, thank you.
Right over here.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I've been banished to a different microphone. Marty Healy.
You're down with the rest of us, please, Marty. Go ahead.
I thought you wanted me to go farther out. Marty Healy, 8 Upland Road, and also a member of the Board of Selectmen. And as Ms. Braccio indicated, there was a 2 votes for, 3 votes against vote by the Board of Selectmen. I was one of the 2 for. The other vote in favor was Mr. Stivers, and in some respects, if Mr. Stivers and I agree on something, that alone should be cause for voting in favor of it, I think. But that may not be enough to carry the day. So I guess 2 things. Number one is the church and state argument, and you know, any individual is entitled to their own opinion about whether or not something crosses a line between church and state. But legally, and it was referenced in the answer to the last question, it's pretty clear that the courts in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, up through and including the Supreme Judicial Court, have determined that an expenditure like this does not violate the church-state separation principles. I mean, it's just, it is, again, there, at the beginning of this process, there were suggestions that some group somewhere was going to sue the town of Southborough. And obviously, anyone has the right to file a lawsuit, but they would be swimming upstream against some very clear precedent by superior courts, courts of appeal, and again, the Supreme Judicial Court. So again, a personal opinion about whether or not it encroaches on church-state, that's fine, but legally, it's clear that it does not in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. That's number one. Number two, I'm not sure that I've ever been in St. Mark's Church. I may have been. I'm not a member, obviously, although maybe they don't necessarily coincide. But my vote in favor of this, and I would encourage you to vote in favor of it on the same grounds, didn't get into what's been referred to as some complicating factors about whether or not it's a nonprofit, because that's fine under CPA funding. Whether or not it goes to an individual, this isn't an individual, but there are individual members of the church. That's not a factor under the CPA. Again, it could be a factor for your decision, but it's really not a factor in terms of whether or not it's an appropriate expenditure under the CPA. Whether or not it's a religious organization. I mean, I already talked about that. There are dozens, sounds like the right number, of expenditures that other municipalities and the state already with this tower has made an expenditure of money, recognizing its historical value. And so I don't want to put too many words in Mr. Stiver's mouth, but certainly the reason I voted in favor of it and encourage you to vote in favor of it is because if I were going to list the structures in Southborough that were historically significant, this might not be number one, but it certainly would be at or near the top of the list. And the way I view the CPA funding is if you determine that a structure, a request falls into that category, that not only is an appropriate expenditure of CPA funds, but if you're going to be true to the reason we put that 1% surcharge on our taxes, then you be true to it and you vote to fund historic preservation. The last thing is, in terms of Mr. Hamilton and Ms. Reynolds' point, I'm not aware of any projects over in the Pine Hill area where Mr. Hamilton is, or farther up Main Street for Ms. Reynolds, that have been voted down by the town. So if there have not been expenditures in Pine Hill or the west end of Main Street or otherwise, it's because they haven't been submitted and met the criteria. I suspect if they did, that we'd be here, and I would be encouraging you to vote for those as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Right over here.
Paul Desmond, 5 Pinecone Lane. Similar to Mr. Healy, I'm not a member of the St. Mark's Church, but I appreciate the building. I do consider it a historic building, and I agree with him. It's probably one of the top 5 in the town. And I sympathize with the gentleman from St. Mark's when he said it does contribute to the character of this town. Some of us may remember a few years ago there was a movie filmed in town at the church right next door to St. Mark's, the Pilgrim Church. Grown Ups, not a particularly good movie, but what does that tell you? If they came here to Southborough to film at that church because they wanted that character, I mean, I think that is absolutely a valid point. And finally, I sympathize with the church members. I mean, let's play this forward. If we don't help these folks out and this thing just crumbles, I mean, to me, that would be tragic, and we can avoid it if we support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Over here, please.
Hello?
Yes?
I'm John Gibson from 119 Northborough Road, and I've been a resident of Southborough since 2014, and I've attended most of the town meetings since then. And at every town meeting, there's always something about historical preservation, whether it be the Burnett House, or perhaps Fayville Hall, or the South Union School. And there are lots of historical buildings all over Southborough. And a lot of them are in rough shape, and they need community preservation funds if we're gonna keep them, standing and in good shape and usable. Some of them, I think, have even been condemned at some point, such as Fayville Hall. We don't have infinite preservation funds. And, St. Mark's obviously has an active and strong community behind it that's raised a lot of the funds themselves to restore the tower. And I'm confident that they could raise the rest if they needed to. And my main point is if we vote today to give them $300,000, that's $300,000 that doesn't go to Fayville Hall, or doesn't go to the townhouse, or doesn't go to the South Union School or any one of the other buildings in Southborough. And those places don't have a parish behind them that that is invested to raise money for them. So my point is, a vote here today, yes, to preserve that tower, is a vote not to do other things. Or it's a vote to deny funding to, say, the townhouse, which in the next article is set to be a bond over 20 years. And we're going to be paying that over time. That means over time there'll be less money in the CPA fund for other opportunities. So that's my point.
All right, thank you. Yes?
Nancy Vargas, 269 Cordoville Road. I am not a member of St. Mark's Church. I'm actually not a member of any church in town. I am an architect and have lived in this town for 22 years. I've been involved in a fairly large number of CPA projects, some that were in the north part of town. I was involved in Peter's Annex funds, which used to be the police station, as you all know. I was involved in South Union School preservation efforts for their window replacements and so forth. I was also involved in the design and building of the Cordoville Triangle Park at the intersection of Southville Road and Cordoville Road. At no time did I make a decision about whether or not to advocate for those projects based on where they were located. I was involved because I'm a citizen of Southborough and because these are historical and valuable assets to our town, our whole town. That this is a church should be somewhat irrelevant. It's a structure that's a church today. If anyone knows anything about global architectural history, there are structures thousands and thousands of years old that were churches that are no longer churches. But their age and their historical value and their reflection of the culture of when they were designed and built is extraordinarily significant. And we should be thinking about this as an asset, a cultural asset for our town, one of very few that still exist here in town, and which contribute enormously to our property values, if that's your primary concern, but also to the fabric and history of our small town. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll continue with who's at the mics, and then I think we're going to get close to wrapping this up. Please, ma'am.
Hi, Michelle Hart, 60 Deerfoot Road. I wanted to make a point about the use of Community Preservation Act funds across the Commonwealth. We had done research on this, and since 2018, more than $9 million of Community Preservation Act funds have gone successfully to the refurbishment or restoration of religious properties. And I wanted to just make one comment to the gentleman that was before me who talked about other properties not receiving CPC funds and then falling into disrepair. That is exactly why we're here today, to avoid this tower falling and crumbling apart. We want to fix it now before it's a safety hazard, or all of those stones will crumble and fall down.
Thank you. I'd ask, we've heard quite a bit, pro, con, and otherwise. So hopefully we're coming to the end. I'm going to come over here. If you have something to add that hasn't been said before, that would be most appreciated. Let's go to this mic, please. Yes.
Hi, Sherry Wittes, 32 Bigelow Road. I had a question about the project, actually.
Okay.
Is there in the memorandum of understanding an O&M plan or a preservation plan for ongoing maintenance so that this doesn't fall into disrepair again? And is St. Mark's Church going to be responsible for the monies for that, or would they be coming back to town meeting at some point for assistance?
Correct me if I don't get every point that you asked. First, memorandum of understanding, yes, there's going to be one. The ongoing maintenance is the responsibility of St. Mark's. And as far as an operations and maintenance type plan, that is covered under the preservation restriction. And under a preservation restriction, there are typically periodic visits to the structure to make sure that it's being maintained in the state required by the PR. I think I hit the broad areas. Is there any part of that I missed?
Just, is St. Mark's Church going to be able to fund that going forward?
Yes, we're told, yes.
Over here.
Regina McAuliffe, 5 General Henry. Can we move the question, please?
Ms. McAuliffe has made a motion to move the question. That requires, that's not debatable, but it requires a 2/3 vote. What it accomplishes if we pass it is that all debate is cut off at this point. At that time, we would then move to a vote on the main motion. So what I'm asking for now is if you are in favor of the motion to move the question and immediately move to a vote on the main motion, that's what you're voting on right now. Requires a 2/3 majority. All in favor of moving the question, please raise your cards. All opposed? I'm going to do that again. All in favor? All opposed? Okay, I declare a 2/3 majority. That motion passes. So now we move immediately to a vote on the main motion for Article 19. This requires a majority vote. All those in favor of Article 19, please raise your cards. All opposed? One more time, please. All in favor? All opposed? We have to count it. It'll be worth the count. Bear with us. Tellers, please come forward. While we're doing that, we will definitely be moving on to Article 20 before the recess. And what our rules call for is for us to continue to the completion of Article 20, even if we go into the recess period. So we'll see where we are at that point, whether we modify the time of the recess or we modify the time we reconvene. I do think we're in very good shape to finish today. So appreciate everybody's patience. Yeah, at this point you could. Yeah. Folks, in order to do this count via the tellers, we do need you to stay where you are. If you're in your chair, please stay in your chair. If you're standing up in the back, please stay where you are so that we can get this count accurately. And we'll let you know when we have it. Thank you. Are we just getting to this now? Yeah, we're going now. All right, the tellers are lined up. All in favor of Article 19, please raise your cards and keep them up until you get counted. Again, appreciate your patience. Okay, you can lower your cards. Hold, we'll call for all those opposed in a minute. All right, all those opposed to the motion on Article 19, please raise your cards, keep them up. Tellers, please count. Andrew, you guys all set? Okay, you can lower your cards. Yeah, but I want to get it started. If we don't break. Or maybe just a half an hour. Have them stay, eat their trail mix. Folks, this is very, 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 10 more varies close. So I made him at it again. on 20? You're going to go right away. Not yet, but when. Okay. Results on Article 19. Votes in favor, 83. Votes opposed, 82. Motion carries. Article 20, Mr. Mills.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town accept Article 20 as printed in the warrant.
Does it receive a second? Mr. Mills, please speak to Article 20.
If it's okay with the hall, I was going to have the town facilities manager or director talk to this article. This is
right.
preservation for the townhouse.
Mr. Parent, Facilities Director, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm John Parent, the Director of Facilities for the town on the town side of operations. Last year, I approached Jason Malinowski, the Chair of the Capital Planning Committee, in regard to some upcoming capital projects we had scheduled for the town hall. And when we got brainstorming, we thought about the possibility of perhaps rolling these projects together into one big project that we could fund through the CPC in order to restore the town hall to its former glory. Over the years, when maintenance was carried out on the town hall, often, as people generally do on their personal properties, things are not always done up to the highest quality standard they should be done when dealing with such a historic and important piece of property. As you drive by, you will notice that you have mortar joints that don't match the rest of the building. We have sandstone that is deteriorating. We have front doors that have been delaminating for decades at this point. The windows, back in 1978, were permanently sealed shut. As a result of that, ventilation has to be carried out all through mechanical components. The weather you are feeling today, this temperature, this is the temperature that offices often reach on the second floor during the summer when the air conditioning is operating. The purpose of this project is to replace and restore the window sashes in the building with energy efficient, operable windows that will historically match what is there, to repoint the masonry on the building, to make sure it is historically correct and looks as though it should look, to replace the roofing structure, repair the moldings and make sure they are painted the proper colors, replace the front doors, and to replace and repair the copper downspouts as they are needed. Needless to say, people have been talking today about the bell tower and historical significance of buildings throughout town. And people were talking whether or not the bell tower will be in the top 5. I can say I believe the townhouse is the top 1. That is the seat of government. That is the building that each of you own. Every person in this room uses the town hall in one way or another. Whether or not you walk in physically, you are using the room, because the employees that serve you function from that building. And my goal is to work with Capital and work with the CPC and work with advisory to bring this building back to where it should be, something we can be proud of, and something that will last for decades and decades and decades to come. So wholeheartedly, I ask for your support on this article because I feel it is truly, truly a worthwhile project that deserves support. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Mr. Parent. Comment or question regarding Article 20? All right, seeing none. Article 20 is a borrowing oh, okay. Go ahead, sir.
Ken Boyd, 10 Ashley Road. Thank you for bringing this forward. Our history is important. But what I see missing in this is some verbiage stating clearly that we intend to use this building as the center of town government for decades and decades and decades. And I was wondering whether it was oversight or some purposeful omission of that text.
Mr.
Thank
Mills?
So if you see, there was some very strong language about the building always being owned by the town, and it would take a vote at the ballot actually of 90% to say, no, we don't want to keep the building. In terms of what the uses of the building, the CPC didn't feel that that was up to us. It was the preservation of the building, the historic significance of the building, but we don't have the authority to dictate to the town how it should be used. I hope that answers the question.
I think so. Any other comment or question, Article 20? Sir, are you going back to the mic?
So may I move then to amend by addition the article to include the text, "The present townhouse, 17 Common Street, shall remain the principal site of town business, including but not limited to the BOS, town clerk, town moderator, tax collector, treasurer, assessors, and town accountant, unless a vote of greater than 75% of votes cast at town election decides otherwise."
It's not going to happen on the fly right now, right? We're going to need your opinion on that. So there is a motion to amend this article. There is some question or has been raised recently regarding the amendability of CPC articles based on the Community Preservation Act, the statute itself. The advice I've been given is that amendments to an article have to be with the approval of the CPC, such that they are supporting the article as amended to bring it to you. Mr. Mills, I don't know, you obviously can't speak for the entire CPC at this point.
We did meet on Thursday. We had one last meeting to go over all the articles again to see if we wanted to make any adjustments at town meeting. I specifically asked the members if there were any recommendations for changes, and there were none, and we discussed that there would be we wouldn't have a meeting at town meeting either, so that we are not making any further recommendations or adjustments to the warrant articles. So, does that answer your question?
Yeah. So I think the way to think about this is we can't take an amendment from the floor on this. Sir, I'll come to you right after this. But the same effect then, if you're inclined not to support it because it doesn't contain a restriction on the use of the building, then I would simply vote against it. Sir, you have a comment or question?
No, just a comment. Jim Caleri, 51 Central Street. I would have stood in total opposition to that amendment, but I'll say this. We do not want to tie our hands behind our back. I know people say it should be on the ballot, We should be the ballot right here. All my life, I've missed 2 town meetings because of storm damage. National Grid called me back to work and I had to work. We run the town. People that don't show up and don't care and tell me, I don't have the time for that stupidness, I'm not going to go to that. Well, good. Then stay home and you don't get to say. This is the greatest form of democracy on the planet, and we're the people that make the decision. And I also do not want to challenge or choke the hands of the Board of Selectmen, the Town of Southborough Advisory Committee, and all the departments working there 20 years, 10 years on down the road, that we will find that building is not sufficient to do the job it has. Maybe some parts of it have to go. Or maybe all of it would go to another building. However, the building still stays with the town to be used by the town for a better designated purpose for that building. I think that would be far more important than to just choke the town here that way. So I strongly urge you to support this. I grew up when I started going to town meeting, we used to use the top floor. There was the police station downstairs, which was a closet. That was about it. Everybody worked from home. But the town was like 1,000 to 2,000 population. Now we're over 10,000. The modern day society definitely puts more burden on municipal people, municipal government. I see it as your town wire inspector. What is required to do what was 10 years ago is totally different. So I strongly urge you, this is finally got to get this building right, and it is of value to the town. Support this.
Thank you. Any other comment or question regarding Article 20? All right, seeing none, this is a borrowing article. It requires a 2/3 majority to be enacted. All those in favor of Article 20, please raise your cards. All opposed, please. Okay, I declare a 2/3 majority. The article passes. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, we've reached the time that I had previously scheduled for a short recess. I'm inclined to think we ought to take at least a short one. We have a few more articles, several more articles, only a few of which should cause us to pause dramatically. So we're looking to gavel back in this afternoon at 2 o'clock. It's now 1:03. Marty, give me a minute, please. I'm going to defend Jim on the absence of food trucks for a second. Jim pounded and pounded and pounded on the owners of food trucks to come here for this event. Nobody would do it because they had no idea how many customers they would get. They had no sense that they would make any money. It is not for lack of effort, as some just knee-jerk assume. So give Jim some credit on that. Meanwhile, please feel free to stay. We're going to play a little music. If you do leave, keep your wristband on so you'll be coming back in quick, and I'll bang the gavel at 2 p.m. For now, we're in recess until then.